Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey back in time to the dawn of civilization itself. Imagine yourself in ancient Mesopotamia, the earth still cool from night's embrace as the first rays of the sun pierce the horizon. This is where it all began, right here in the Fertile Crescent, as daylight slowly creeps over endless fields and rippling waters. It's a spectacle sure to take your breath away, if the ancient air full of mysterious smoke doesn't get you first. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As the morning unveils the sprawling landscape of Mesopotamia, you feel the weight of history pressing down, like an invisible force urging you to open your eyes wider, to see into the origins of our shared human narrative. You picture the land, vivid and fertile, cradled between the Tigris and the Euphrates. These rivers are like liquid seams, stitching together a swath of terrain that breathes and dreams of new beginnings. Scholars still argue whether the discovery of agriculture here was intentional or a happy accident of nature. Perhaps those early settlers simply woke up one day to find that their forgotten lentil snack had sprouted into a field of ironic bounty. The air is thick with anticipation as communities gather to face the promise and the peril of a new day. Picture farmers beginning their daily rites, glancing at the sky's shifting hues to forecast the day's temperament. A stray breeze carries earthy notes, scents mingling like the symphony of sounds in a busy marketplace. You imagine the locals milling about, their sandaled feet leaving transient patterns in the dust just as ephemeral as their ambitions. You might assume life back then was primitive, a world without Wi-Fi and fancy iced lattes, but these folks were the original DIY pioneers. They lived at the edge of mystery here in the Fertile Crescent, a phrase that sounds more like a fun yoga pose than a historical fact. Here, among the vast sweeps of virgin land, they began planting the seeds of a new kind of life, an organized chaos that would give birth to innovation beyond their wildest dreams. Historians nod wisely, describing this era as a pivotal moment when human beings unshackled themselves from a nomadic existence and got seriously down to the business of civilization. The sun, now a full orb in the sky, casts its golden glow, illuminating fields that whisper stories of resilience and creativity. Eventually, as villages transformed into cities, there bubbled up a need for something akin to what we today would call a planner, a way to reckon with the tasks of daily life. The urgency of survival morphed into shared aspirations, as the spectacle of dawn over these fertile plains signaled more than just the start of a new day. Like actors awaiting their curtain call, people were preparing to step onto the world stage, with dreams as grand and vast as the land itself. The whispers of ancient kings and scholars seemed to murmur through the wind. The world would change today, and it would change here. In a place where the earth itself seemed to hold endless potential, almost inviting the human hand to mold and shape, you sensed the profound intimacy of a new era being born. And so life unfurled in this primordial landscape, under skies that spoke of possibilities. The horizon stretched, an ancient canvas against which the silhouettes of early Mesopotamians appeared like ink blots on parchment, each figure etched in relief against the glowing backdrop, heralding the dawn of a new kind of orderly chaos. Would you have survived in this swirling birth of civilization? Maybe. Or maybe you'd find yourself craving modern conveniences as you ponder whether to call it quits after one too many encounters with ignoble bookkeeping duties like tracking last week's goat sales. As the morning sun climbs higher, peeling away the last shadows of night, your thoughts twist and twine with a realization. Here, in the heart of Mesopotamia, you are at ground zero for much of what we take for granted today. It's a place where dreams wrestled with the dawn, each ray of light, unwinding possibilities that only those ready to seize them could grasp. As you contemplate this vibrant tableau, it becomes clear that this dawn is not merely an ending of nighttime, but the cradle of civilization itself, the fertile beginnings of a tapestry woven in endless threads of discovery and innovation. Imagine it's yet another day in ancient Mesopotamia. The sun spills its golden light over the fertile riverbanks of the Tigris and Euphrates. Villagers rub their eyes, stretch lazily, and head out to their sun-drenched fields. But this isn't your run-of-the-mill farming community anymore. No, things are cooking up quite the stew of complexity here, and we're not just talking about the literal pots bubbling with evening supper. As you wander into town, you stumble upon the nascent signs of city life growing like mushrooms after a rainfall, full of vibrant energy and teeming with promise. And, sure, more than a little chaos. Picture this: wide-eyed newcomers trickling into the burgeoning city, Uruk for example, appearing like proverbial kids in a candy store. There's hustle and bustle, a constant din in the air, as communities fashion entirely new ways to coexist. Those mere clusters of reed huts now threaten to morph into sprawling metropolises. And with that growth, something curious happens. An assortment of social issues spring up like weeds. How do people manage this unruly new way of life among such crowded avenues and claustrophobic alleyways? Turns out they need to become the ancient planners we never knew we needed. Who knew 5000 BC was full of early Type A personalities? In this urban playground, there's a pressing need to create systems, rules, and a modern touch you might appreciate, a way to manage time effectively. You can almost feel the pressure mounting at city hall meetings, wherever and however those might have unfolded. Fun fact: historians still argue whether these governance talks resembled anything more than boisterous shouting matches. It's within this crucible of city pressure that enterprising Mesopotamians began laying the groundwork for civilization's social architecture. Amidst this vibrant tapestry of life, knowledge becomes a new form of currency. People start seeing the value in communal experiences, storytelling, and oral tradition. Resounding over pomegranate trade transactions and meetings near the local ziggurat, the skyscrapers of the ancient world, one might overhear talk of rising astronomers and temple scribes organizing chaos by making sense of harvests and economic exchanges. Remember that stage of life where you first discovered sticky notes? Consider this a grandparent-level version, only with more clay and less adhesive. On any given day, throngs of individuals band together in marketplaces, offering goods and services, mingling as they exchange stories about the God-given abundance of the rivers. Peddlers artfully hawk dates and alabaster trinkets, while elders recount adventures from the latest caravan trade, no doubt exaggerated after the third cup of date wine. Juggling these narratives with daily responsibilities sparks innovation, propelling Mesopotamians to craft written records. Enter the city dweller's need for the tool of all trades: lists. Because let's face it, how is Utnapishtim supposed to remember his weekly grocery haul otherwise? Amid this cacophony, hierarchies start to dance about, dictating how things get done here in the Mesopotamian cityscape. A blend of social classes emerges, encompassing peasants tilling fields to fund scribes spending hours deciphering starlit calendars. Think of it as ancient LinkedIn, but with significantly fewer cat memes and more chisel and stone resumes. Mind the step up to urban professionalism. Risks include loss of free-range shepherding career options. Of course, cities are not solely built on backbreaking labor. The political landscape arises and morphs into something more than simple tribal orders. To keep peace among increasingly varied groups, notable figures, perhaps religious leaders or ambitious traders, begin making the laws of the land a thing. Although there are no wordy legal tomes just yet, the practice of list-making nudges itself into politics. Seasoned aspirations of ensuring society's smooth operation fill the air like a honeyed breeze, seductive and absolutely indispensable. So as you stand on the sun-dappled streets, you notice another aspect of city life blooming under your feet. Specialized professions springing like daisies after spring rain. The city's growth demands the growth of its people's expertise. Potters and stonecutters, builders and weavers, each carving out their niche, their raison d'etre in this new blossoming urban milieu. Yet amidst this bustling social transformation, historians are still unsure whether the shift towards centralized roles came about as spontaneous enthusiasm or begrudging pragmatism. Historians still argue whether defiant grocer scribes, hatted, smudged with dust, can be credited with the whole organized chaos culture. Of course, one isn't inclined to argue with an annoyed seller of Mesopotamian flatbread who's run fresh out of tally stick division. Over time, tradition-altering shifts create a clarion call to the inventive among the populace. It's as if the city whispers softly into its people's ear. Adapt, create, or stay behind as an obscure footnote in history. Population growth translates into a need to manage literally everything, from food distribution to ensuring temples keep their effervescent divinity mojo flowing uninhibited. There's a latent humanity stirring, intuitively beginning to grapple with that most human of challenges, trade-offs. Which gets priority? Building grain silos or commissioning grand ziggurats adorned with decorative finials? With the dust from bustling city life beginning to settle, you see the gradual realization trickling down like a desert mirage. Such tumultuous lives necessitate structure. It's clear that Mesopotamians basked in their newfound urban grit, acknowledging that while countryside life held its pastoral charm, it was within the city's kaleidoscope of excitement they could reach the apex of human potential. It was the city's song, old as time and vibrant beyond compare, that coaxed them into inventiveness, fostering scientific elegance and social creativity, as if held aloft by their ingenious synergy. And as you cast one last glance over Mesopotamian rooftops, imagining shadows stretching longer beneath the inky night sky, know that rooted within the soil of these teeming metropoli lie the origins of writing and city governance, a testament to human innovation, forged at the juncture where chaos meets ambition. Here, amidst this tapestry of thriving urban life, Mesopotamia unfurled its wings, soaring toward a newfound horizon where the world's first cities would lay claim to their rightful place in history. Picture yourself in ancient Mesopotamia, in a world where the noon sun weighs heavy and the scent of clay mingles with the earthy aura of the Tigris and Euphrates. Here, amid whispering reeds and bustling city markets, you trudge through a landscape that's just as lively as a modern-day bazaar, but with a bit more sand in your sandals. As you navigate these dusty streets, something miraculous is brewing, a transformative invention that will revolutionize communication forever, cuneiform. You see, back in the day, it was the day roughly around 3200 BC, mind you, communication wasn't exactly a walkie-talkie chat or a quick email. Instead, everything was oral and fleeting, much like explaining latest TikTok trends to your grandparents, misunderstood and quickly forgotten. To fix this, Mesopotamians came up with a way to make those words stick. A little like that piece of gum you didn't notice until stepping in it. Cuneiform evolved gradually, its birth sparked by an ever-growing need to document trade, rituals, and that uncle's infamous party where half the goats were misplaced. At first glance, it might seem like a system of mere scratches and sticks, lines etched into clay because papyrus hadn't RSVP'd yet. But historians argue whether it was divine inspiration or just plain serendipity that led someone to take a reed stylus, press it into a wet tablet, and shout, "Eureka!" At least we imagine that's what they'd say if they were familiar with Archimedes in ancient Greek. Picture yourself hunched beside a scribe, under the shade of a palm, watching as they create marks that to your modern eye resemble bird tracks more than meaningful text. The scribe, akin to the first reluctant student cramming for finals, diligently makes sure each grain of truth, each transaction, and each tribute to the gods are recorded with meticulous attention. Remember that stilettos of knowledge we mentioned earlier? Here's where it kicks in. The cleverness of cuneiform was its versatility in communicating abstract ideas. And like every tech breakthrough, it started simple. Tally marks for counting sheep and other livestock, which also acted as the precursor to advanced mathematics. Historians still dispute whether the Mesopotamians foresaw this would lead to quadratic equations or simple torment to high school students millennia later. The quirky tidbit worth noting? They used this early script for a plethora of purposes, even documenting the oldest known recipe for beer. Cheers to innovation. So, you're probably wondering how these symbols got from practical use to some of the earliest forms of literature. Well, once you could reliably capture commerce data and stories of abundance or famine, why not etch out an epic tale or two? Thus emerged the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the first great works of literature and also the prototype for the reluctant hero narrative, proving that brooding characters are timeless. Our adventurous scribes didn't function in a vacuum, though. They were part of an ever-thickening tapestry of urban life and politics, demanding accurate accounts and eloquent poetry alike. Picture a bustling scribe's school, stacked with moist clay tablets, its resident wise soul continually flipping reed styluses like an ancient fidget spinner, both meditative and essential to their craft. Today's ASMR lovers have nothing on the soothing scratch that reverberates each time a stylus touches clay. Interestingly enough, the creation of cuneiform marked a cultural shift that afforded power to these interpreters of clay. Like modern-day programmers, scribes became indispensable in society. They were ancient VIPs of knowledge, fluent in the language of the gods and humans alike. Their words shaped announcements, legal matters, and enacted edicts that resonated across Mesopotamia. As shadows grow long, we leave the scribe in solemn reflection, wet clay on his hands, as he memorizes hymns and records that will outlive his years. Little did he know, these markings, though creations of his present, would become a whisper of our past, echoing the start of written civilization. So next time you hurriedly type your grocery list on your phone, remember, you're merely continuing a tradition that has been etched in clay and burned in fires, truly the first hot takes, all the way from Mesopotamia. Isn't it comforting to know our simplest lists are part of such a grand, timeless continuum of human ingenuity? You're trudging through the sun-baked streets of ancient Mesopotamia. The familiar scent of wet clay hangs in the air, a byproduct of the bustling artisan workshops. In these workshop homes, an ancient breed of intellects, the scribes, perform their daily miracles. Picture them hunched with tools like the stylus, a simple reed instrument and echoes of the first pen, cradled deftly in calloused hands. They're like the ancient multitaskers, the original overachievers clocking in a relentless cycle of doling out the written word by the slice. Now, wipe the sweat off your brow and stroll over to the nearest scribe as he fashions a clay tablet. He scoops up a pinched mound of fresh, moist earth, smoothing it with the expertise of a potter working the day's dough. Historians still argue whether these skilled creators were revered artists or merely positioned somewhere between bureaucrats and blue-collar workers of their time. But there's no denying the crucial impact of their craft. With a keen eye for detail, a steady hand, and a steady supply of clay muck, they're the backbone of Mesopotamian communication. These tablets, their surfaces glistening in the early sun, will soon hold the inklings of the world's earliest to-do lists. And what's a to-do list but a litany of existential small talk that whispers the endless human dialogue? What's next? Forget post-its and phone reminders. This is where it all began, with marks pressed into the soft clay, creating the immortal script of cuneiform. Have you ever kneaded dough, feeling the tactile satisfaction in forming something pliable and responsive? Crafting a tablet feels like that, but with much more on the line than a burnt loaf of bread. It's an art form, a balancing act of timing and pressure. Too firm and the characters remain trapped in unintelligible squiggles. Too gentle and the impressions vanish like self-respect at a high school reunion. The trick is applying just the right pressure at the crucial moment. An endeavor that probably keeps certain scribes in the ancient equivalent of fingertip boot camp. Those squiggles, those tiny wedge-shaped impressions, are more than just dots and dashes of a pre-humanized Morse code. Often, they were to-do lists, trading alchemy for agriculture, from instructions on managing the temple's grain stores to obscure records detailing the specific tally on sheep or goats obligated for the cult of an eerily needy god. Fun fact, some tablets even enumerate changes in hairstyles requested of the royal coiffurists. Imagine losing sleep over managing Cleopatra's curls. Let's meander back to the step-by-step methodology of these seers of squiggles. Once marked with its initial purpose, the nascent list is set aside to dry in the warm Mesopotamian sun, or, more formally, kilned for permanence. Some scribe-created tablets of utmost importance are baked to withstand the wrath of time. Meanwhile, temporary records might merely sunbathe until official orders deem them dispensable, recycled back into the earth from whence they came. A little like Snapchat for the ancient administration set, only far more biodegradable. Many tablets emerge as mere transactional notes, listing goods exchanged or services rendered. Was it 2 goats for a jar of that particularly fine barley beer? Or perhaps something more bureaucratic, like a running tab of despotic demands requiring divine intervention? Well, we'll let the future archaeologists sort that out. It's not as if your time-traveling intuition has much room for such fiscal frivolity. Yet it ensures that the minutiae of daily life remain etched in historical static, cosmic echoes that might one day betray the mundane routines that occupied the yearnings of the cradle of civilization. And let's not even get started on whether or not the ancient scribes secretly sighed the Mesopotamian equivalent of, "It's not just a job, it's an adventure," before committing themselves, not infrequently under threat of a ruler's whims, to the lifelong art of repetitive notation. Despite the occasional monotony and cramped wrist, there emerged a scribal caste from this meticulous claywork, revered and indispensable, filling roles that branched into the domains of accounting, bureaucracy, and even the arcane practices of astrology. Within those clay huts, simple exteriors hiding vast realms of thought, lay the foundation for what would become known as civilization's very infrastructure. Without the skilled hands of these ancient forerunners scratching down lists of provincial produce and kingly decrees, people might still be trying to remember whether they left the lamps burning back at the village. So as you watch this scribe finish his delicate scrollwork, matter-of-factly mopping sweat from his brow, you might ponder whether he'd have preferred the glam life afforded a potter or a less existential spreadsheet gig. But maybe what stays your judgment is the solemn recognition that, regardless of vocation, what the scribes etched into those dampened rectangles wouldn't phase easily as the Homo sapient memory. Instead, they etched the echoes of humanity on time's endless tapestry, leaving behind a history on which future visionaries, and maybe a time-traveling wanderer like yourself, might one day reflect, thick with nostalgic awe. The morning sun lazily stretches out over Uruk, casting a warm, golden glow across its narrow streets and towering ziggurats. You wander through the thrumming heart of one of the world's first cities, and it's a bit like navigating rush hour in NYC, without the honking yellow taxis and Big Apple vendors hawking hot dogs. The crowds of people bustling around you are a tapestry of priests in ornate robes, merchants haggling over precious goods, and scribes diligently making their way to scribe yawnings, perhaps some scribe sinos in hand. Here, in the city of Uruk, everyone and everything seems to be in a state of organized chaos. The priests, guardians of the city's spiritual and bureaucratic life, coordinate religious ceremonies and festivals, ensuring that the cosmic dance between gods and mortals remains in step. And like a conductor weaving intricate patterns with their baton, priests wave to trusted scribes who document, categorize, and list every detail of these celestial events. Meanwhile, the merchants, think of them as the early Mesopotamian versions of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, are elbow-deep in the trade market. When every ounce of spice or bushel of grain can mean the difference between prosperity and want, recording transactions on clay tablets is crucial. These proto-Bill Gates of the ancient world are cheekily adamant that their ledgers stay accurate down to the last shekel. Historians still argue whether the Mesopotamian shekel carried more economic weight than today's Bitcoin. But one thing is for sure, it was all documented. Every transaction, every trade, etched meticulously onto rows and columns of cuneiform lists. As you trudge forward, you can't help but marvel at the scribes who, much to the envy of the illiterate herds, flaunt their writing skills. Seated cross-legged, scribes are the lifelines of Uruk, their hands dancing nimbly over wet clay tablets. Those tablets will become the to-do lists that orchestrate this urban symphony, from the mundane tallying of sheep in the fields to the elaborate scheduling of festivals near the grand temples. In Uruk, lists don't just chronicle, they structure society itself. Picture this. Priests maintain long inventories of offerings, everything from barley husks to vine vestments, required for smoky rituals. And for every blessing and chant that ascends to the heavens, it's likely there's an etched sign-off down here requiring a double check. It's like an ancient Amazon fulfillment center, where you can't risk running low on critical stock, in this case sacrificial lambs rather than garden hoses. Yet beyond business and prayer, the city hums with a vibrant array of artisans and craftsmen. Potters, metalworkers, weavers, all engaging in their own little ballet of trade, reliance, and record-keeping. Lists facilitate this complex urban life, marking the dance steps each citizen must follow through the day's tight choreography. Whether tracking material inventories or orders, lists ensure the cobbler doesn't forget about that urgent sandal repair for the local high priest, otherwise risking divine unshoeing. Oh, and let's not forget logistics. In a city teeming with activity, planning is everything. Historians muse over whether the coaches, no horses needed, could keep track of their developing transportation networks without these lists. With goods and people moving ceaselessly to support a flourishing urban culture, streets are crowded, yet the ancient GPS systems, those ubiquitous lists, keep things moving smoothly, or as smoothly as Mesopotamian cobblestones allow. But in-laws and holidays aside, Uruk's charm lies in its perfect blend of the sacred and the secular. You might pause to admire a street artist chiseling breathtaking reliefs onto clay, while ladies with shapely baskets breeze past. The latest fashion in Mesopotamian market woven bandanas, keeping their hair as immaculate as modern runway models. It's this glorious dance of culture, commerce, and spirituality that makes Uruk unique, and quite possibly a hub of organized life outpacing even the busiest of today's metropolises. As you stroll, you might sense a whisper on the edge of your thoughts, a recognition of how their ingenuity is rooted in something so deceptively simple, yet astoundingly profound. After all, the embryo of modern administration starts here with meticulous tablets. Each detail recorded, each tick on a list, guiding the city's thriving daily life. In the city of Uruk, lists weren't merely ink stains on clay or arbitrary musings. They were the backbone of civilization itself, structuring each pulse of community life and echoing silently through the eons until today. It's a gentle reminder that the earliest form of urban organization could balance complexity with the simplest of systems, an invaluable precursor to what we sometimes grimace at today, bureaucracy. So, the next time you're ticking off your own to-do list, spare a thought for the scribes of Uruk, who, unbeknownst to them, were scripting the dawn of systematic living. Who knew that your forgotten dentist appointment had ties tracing back to Uruk's sacred offerings schedule and millet tastings down market alleyways? It's the seemingly mundane details that weave the grand tapestry of civilization. Just ask Uruk. You find yourself amidst the fertile plains of ancient Mesopotamia, a land cradled by the Tigris and Euphrates, where the soil feels almost magical underfoot. It's as if every whisper of the wind carries the secrets of harvests past. This is a world that hums with the rhythms of agriculture, a symphony played out under the sun each day. Here the farmers have something clutched in calloused hands that looks deceptively simple, but is revolutionary in its utility. Clay tablets filled with lists. Now picture this. You're not just a farmer. You are a master of time itself, dictating the order and chaos of nature with the precision of a modern-day planner app. Your gaze sweeps over your fields, and those tablets crammed with etchings of wedge-shaped symbols, cuneiform to the cool historians among us, are your indispensable guides. These lists help you and your fellow cultivators sculpt the landscape into a cornucopia, feeding the sprawling metropolis that Mesopotamia is becoming. Your ancient Fitbit reminding you it's o'clock. When it comes to understanding agriculture, the Mesopotamians were the pioneers of doing things the hard way to invent the easy way. Lists are crammed with notes and reminders, like when to plant barley or set the oxen to till. You might think you've got a green thumb, but wait until you've coordinated farming activities according to the cyclical dance of zodiac signs and moon phases. Historians still argue whether these were more than agricultural whimsies, perhaps ancient attempts to woo favor from errant weather gods. Many of these farming lists held more weight than your average grocery checklist. Ancient scribes didn't just jot notes. Their clay tablets became cornerstones of cooperative farming, ensuring that each clan playing the farming game was contributing to the harvest jackpot. Almost ironic, isn't it, that the dawn of organized agriculture would hinge on little more than impressionable mud? Whipping through the rows of flourishing cereals, an intriguing thought sprinkles itself into the collective cereal bowl that was Mesopotamian society: crop rotation. A simple yet revolutionary principle, it placed demands on the keenest of agricultural minds to plan fields not just for today, but also for future generations. It may seem pragmatic now, a yawn-inducing class project, but this concept, encapsulated in a series of lists, was an innovation that had neighbors peeking enviously over each other's hedges. It wasn't just beneficial to farmers themselves. These precise notes became invaluable tools for local rulers, who needed reliable food supplies to sustain the Mardi Gras equivalent of empire-throwing parties, public feasts, and religious ceremonies. So perhaps, just perhaps, scribbles on the tablets were the true keys to a ruler's heart, or at least to a full city granary. And granaries were more than just oversized bread boxes with hulking guards. The fluctuations in stockpiles, the lines drawn or erased in their ledgers, carried implications as profound as the plagues of locusts. Back in your sandals, crunching across sun-dried earth, you encounter a curious practice. Apotropaic magic, the act of casting protective spells via inscribed charms on these tablets. Because when rains have been scanty, and the fields seem to prey on farmers' nerves whispering drought, desperate times call for enchanted lists. Unlike pest-clouded skies, the effectiveness of these magical lists in divining weather remains deliciously speculative. But even then, wading through a sea of earthly tasks, farmers found solace and direction in lists written allegedly by hands blessed by supernatural forces. Ancient debates sparked around the authenticity and creation story of these potent clay missives. Were these scribes seers, or merely wheat-savvy bureaucrats? Some suggest an early divine inspiration. Others lean towards a tale lacking myth and magic, with historians left to pick at the remains like doctors diagnosing an extinct species' favorite snack. What we can be more decisive about is that these tablets formed society's first battle against chaos, a direct line into the complex web of humanity's early relationship with nature. Lists of chores to gods were born, scratched delicately into clay after fastening the trifecta of food stock, weather, and mystical seal into a cooperative pact with unseen forces. With time, otherworldly influences would either fade or pivot into rituals, yet leaving Mesopotamian agriculture intact, a testament to human ingenuity. Back at the farm, under the streaks of an evening sky melting into the plains, you see your reflection haloed in the fertile canvas. The roots of your labor were only ever visible if you knew where to dig, entangled and interlinked, converging within these clay tablets. They were monuments to survival skill and far-sightedness, coaxing food from soil in a way that still echoes through millennia to our Farmer's Almanac app-infused era. Those diligent farmers weren't just groundbreakers. They were akin to early board members in the Committee of Earth's First City Planners, their notes influencing the seasons like deft puppet masters. From ink to pixel, the evolution of to-do lists threads back to those ancient moments where the sun slipped lazily over Mesopotamia's horizon, casting long shadows on fields that teetered between lushness and arid desolation. If you ever find yourself in the daily grind of 21st century life, complaining about your grocery list or grumbling at an online calendar alert, reflect for a moment. Picture the farmer of Mesopotamia clutching their handcrafted slice of clay like a MapQuest printout in a labyrinth. They were pioneers of productivity in a world where tireless effort and celestial mysteries orbited their daily existence, much like the ancient, surprisingly unwinded equivalent of a side hustle, moonlighting as both laborer and astronomer, forever chasing that bumper crop dream. You find yourself journeying along the dusty trade routes of ancient Mesopotamia. The ochre sand stretches as far as the eye can see, shimmering under the relentless sun. The air is thick with the exotic smells of spices and the occasional grunt of a camel navigating the rugged path. As you trudge alongside a caravan, haggling over prices in your mind, you realize this is no mere mood-setting stroll. You're on a mission fueled by lists. Yes, those trusty compilations of information that seem to be the bane or boon of societies everywhere, then and now. Trade across the vast deserts and imposing seas during ancient Mesopotamia wasn't just about daring adventurers with windswept hair making it big. No, those audacious merchants had a secret weapon. Meticulously crafted lists that stood between them and utter chaos. It's one thing to have a dreamy notion of traversing unknown lands. It's entirely another to have to recall how many beads you've bartered for that exquisite ostrich feather when you're knee-deep in negotiations. Just imagine the ancient equivalent of forgetting your grocery list at home and trying to recall whether it's milk, eggs, or gold ingots you need more. Lists were a vital lifeline, cataloging shipments of lapis lazuli, cedarwood, and donkeys ready for trade across bustling marketplaces. Through these carefully maintained records, business thrived, and Mesopotamia connected to trading partners in the Indus Valley, Anatolia, and even upstart Egypt. Historians still argue about how far exactly these trade networks extended. Some say they reached the mythical lands where unicorns roamed. Others wisely stick to more grounded realities. Yet trade flourished, undeniably, with scribes recording each transaction with unwavering dedication, armed only with bundles of clay tablets. Picture it. You're a scribe, perched on a modest stool, stylus in hand, eked out in quiet concentration as you add one entry after another onto a damp clay slate. There's a rhythmic scrape and etch, filling the air as if you're writing the world's most tedious but crucial rock ballad. A fine layer of dust settles over your toga while you recount beads, fabrics, and livestock by oil lamp light. Make one mistake and a disgruntled trader just might accuse you of nefarious deeds, or, worse, offer a scathing review on Mesopotamian Yelp. With meticulous detail, those lists provide a snapshot of the trade ebb and flow, glimpses of ivory imported from Africa, resin from Syria, or tin from distant lands to be transformed into prized bronze. Then there's the quirky little tidbit about ancient beer. Oh yes, one can almost hear echoes of ancient traders heartily agreeing that a well-documented beer trade is surely as crucial as any precious metal. And let us not forget the robust export of wool textiles, paving the woolly path for the Mesopotamian fashion summer collection. In this linguistic tapestry, it's inevitable that aspects of trade and list-keeping would work their way into the very fabric of storytelling. While epic tales of gods and kings soared, merchant anecdotes and sly bartering tricks stole the show in side conversations. Designated storytellers, keen to be on trend, whipped these trade antics into fables and folklore, passing them down generations. At the heart of all this travel and trade, though, was a curious concept of trust, not just between traders exchanging goods miles apart, but in the very lists themselves. Their integrity was paramount, acting as tangible proof of promises kept or broken. Mistakes could lead to disastrous misunderstandings equivalent to a modern-day text snafu, creating a viral debacle. The sacred agreement extended beyond mere logistics, edging into philosophical realms. Was a list infallibly objective, or did it too sway under the whims of human biases? Yet, scribes weren't all work and no play. Amidst the cracks and wear of centuries-old tablets, a playful scribal graffito or two emerges. Proto-memes, so to speak. Of course, these were mostly light-hearted jabs or candid bits of ironic wisdom, etched forever on an insignificant corner of crucial trade records. It's reassuring to know ancient humans, although steeped in scrupulous trade practices, weren't above indulging in a touch of scholarly humor. During your sojourn along these routes, the sheer magnitude of trade operations leaves you pondering the organizational prowess behind these undertakings. Wealth poured through ports like the Tigris and Euphrates with the mantra, "If it's not on the list, it simply doesn't exist." It's comforting, really, realizing that paradoxically, even as advanced civilizations dominated regions and forged connections with unfamiliar lands, their penchant for listing parallel that time you wrote "Conquer World" on your whiteboard only to realize you meant to buy milk. But let us pause in humor, for the intellectual exchange surrounding those routes mirrors the interplay of cultures. Goods passed hand in hand, yes, but so did ideas, weaving a greater tapestry of shared thoughts and inspirations. As lists facilitated seamless exchange, they nudged the expansion of culture and knowledge, often leading to unexpected discoveries. Echoes of the Neolithic Age, the seeds of history planted unknowingly with each traded item. It's fascinating, this silent partnership between commerce and cognition, a network of movement reliant on concise inventories. Could one lose oneself amid golden treasures, trusted buddies, and vibrant markets without a well-defined list? Likely not. Imminent chaos lurked without their steadfast columns and rows. As you trek onward, the tranquil song of ancient sands swirls like a comforting lullaby. You reflect on how such lists etched into their civilization's vast narrative continue to echo through time. They're the precursors of modern logistics and record-keeping leaflets we cling to today. A declaration that maybe, just maybe, prioritizing a few orderly words on clay isn't such a calamity after all. And so the world spins forward, helmed by courageous scribbles, each of us playing our role in an intricate trade of understanding and purpose across deserts and beyond. As you step into the heart of ancient Mesopotamian civilization, try to imagine the hum of activity where lists are the hidden pulse of society. They are the whispered prayers of order amid the chaos of a bustling administration. You can almost hear the gentle scraping of reeds on clay, as scribes dutifully etch the symbols of cuneiform into wet sludge, a task as satisfying as popping bubble wrap, but decidedly less modern. This intricate dance of record-keeping blooms in the dimly lit offices of ziggurats, where the echoes of sandals on stone meet the rustling of inscribed tablets. Here, it's evident that Mesopotamian rulers have mastered the fine art of delegation, allowing them the leisure to concentrate on the more noble pursuits of ruling, like inventing elaborate titles for themselves. Imagine crafting the title King of the Four Quarters of the World, because king just seemed so 2500 BCE. The bureaucratic mindset flourished, akin to a cosmic spreadsheet where everything and everyone had a place. This ordered rhythm was the lifeline of tax collection, involving lists as comprehensive as a celebrity's social media feed. Evidence shows that these lists were meticulous, capturing everything from grains and livestock to textiles and labor contributions. You might wonder how taxes were enforced. Perhaps the fear of celestial consequences worked better than any audit. Scholars continue to ponder whether the public's tax compliance was more out of cosmic duty or fear of a very terrestrial reprimand. Even within the rigid structure of administration, there is room for petty politics and personal feuds. Scribes, armed with their reed pens, wielded power in their words, crafting texts that decided more than just resource allocation. Did you shortchange a neighbor and find a few sheep missing from your list? The scribes could help, though perhaps with some extra barley on the side. And just like that, the bureaucratic machine of Mesopotamia whirred on, carefully maintaining the balance between chaos and control. But these lists were not just tools. They were symbols of human endeavor, an attempt to conquer the whims of nature and human nature alike. The bountiful harvest of the Euphrates and Tigris needed careful monitoring, lest one king's tribute pool turn into an uncut episode of Cribs. The lists, each line methodically inscribed, marked time's passage, chronicling who ran the show when the scribes were in the mood for taking sides. But no bureaucracy, however sophisticated, is free from challenges. One harried scribe may have lost it when placed on road detail, documenting the occasional missing caravan. That level of accountability could drive anyone to consider a career change. Did they ever argue about the definition of a flood year, as Earth seasons are sometimes blurry? The debate rages on about how factors like excessive rainfall were viewed or manipulated within administrative records. Among these administrative marvels, there's also room for a lighter touch. Even rulers knew that humor and documentation could act as the ancient rule number 8. Thou shalt not bore thy subjects into rebellion. Historical fragments hint at the occasional whimsical touch, a predecessor to a clever office memo hidden among tax decrees. Yet, despite this occasional levity, the fact remained that hierarchies defined Mesopotamian politics and daily life. Those in power dictated laws by inscribing them onto stele with lists that would later be buried under the sands of time, only to be unearthed by archaeologists thousands of years later. It's as if they knew that one day future generations would be poring over these lists, immersed in awe at humankind's first attempts at codifying complexity. Perhaps while trying to make sense of those pesky parking tickets, historians still argue whether scribes themselves endured unpaid fines. The profoundness of their system lay not only in the control it afforded ancient powers, but in its acknowledgement of human necessity to framework chaos. It's reassuring to think that humanity has long been in the habit of writing notes to avoid forgetting, so all those hastily scribbled napkin reminders aren't as modern after all. Imagining yourself in this world of ancient administration, you cannot help but ache with the curiosity and joy of discovery. You feel the brush of clay beneath your fingertips and resonate with the rhythm of chiseling order from disorder, an endeavor as timeless as the first footprint in soft clay. And despite the evolution in our screen-filled lives today, you realize that the distance isn't that far after all. When you pause to update your apps, handle tax season, or begrudgingly organize a digital calendar, remember that Mesopotamian lists were much more useful than any forgotten password. After all, some things never change, including the need to keep a universe of details from becoming tangled yarn, where missing stitches might just lead to losing track of 30 sheep or so. In the world of ancient Mesopotamia, as you stroll under the whirling constellations of the night sky, you might feel a sense of cosmic grandeur that the early city dwellers certainly recognized. Ever the pragmatists, they quickly grasped that celestial patterns were more than mere decoration. Stars governed seasons, dictated when to plant crops and when to harvest. But more intimately, they were said to whisper secrets about divine intentions and the eternal dance of life. And that's where lists made their dramatic entrance, stage left. Think of a society where lunar eclipses and solar solstices weren't just neat tricks of nature, but rather grand celestial cues prompting villages to erupt in choreographed rituals. From our vantage point, it's like trying to synchronize a family vacation with a toddler's erratic napping schedule, organized chaos. Yet for the priests and ritual leaders of ancient Mesopotamia, this was serious business. They relied on lists to ensure everything. Every offering, every chant, every bean casserole was executed with cosmic precision. Here, misplacing a sacred pomegranate wasn't a minor clerical error, but a potential affront to the heavens. In a realm where gods were known by dozens of epithets, each demanding specific offerings, the Mesopotamians' religious calendar lists might have looked less like orderly spreadsheets and more like complex flowcharts, teetering on the absurd. Think about it. You're trying to schedule perfumed oil offerings to Anu in the morning and avoiding overarching floods by wooing Enki by lunchtime. Historians still argue whether the priests ever short-circuited, waking up one day to offer a sheep to the moon goddess Nana instead of, say, Inanna. One thing's clear. To keep the cosmic peace, the Sumerians had to constantly reevaluate and update their ceremonial to-do lists, with the precision of an overzealous wedding planner juggling 3 receptions. Over in the temples, records show that holy days erupted into ceremonious festivities, blending solemnity with vibrant community spirit. Sacrifices, songs, and processions filled the ziggurats, all neatly dictated by the lists. Incenses spiraled into the air, their scent mingling with the autumnal sweetness of first crushed wine. Here, lists kept the spiritual cadence moving, ensuring the right songs were sung in tune, and let's face it, preventing any awkwardly unscheduled pauses where an unplanned goat might trot through the temple. It's probably safe to say, without those lists, many a priest might have felt like a fish out of the cleansing fountain. Now let's pivot your imagination a bit. Consider the quirky nuance. These lists weren't just sober records. They had flair. They were inked into clay tablets, reflecting the flowing lines of cuneiform that captured more than mere instructions, but the vibrancy of eternal life itself. Picture each etching singing praises into the universe, forming a symphonic ensemble recorded on slabs that could sing forth centuries later. Each line, each character, a beat in the cosmic drum, once punctuated by clay's firm canvas, now resonating through the sands of time. One curious debate touches upon whether some of these elaborate festivity checklists doubled as early cosmic PR campaigns. Come for the sacrifice, stay for the dance, has a charming ring, doesn't it? With the priesthood possibly striving to outshine rival cities' celebrations, viewed now through a cinematic lens, these yearly calendrical to-dos might even evoke visions of their PowerPoint presentations. This slide shows the progress of our celestial chicken launch ceremony. But humor aside, the depth of their faith manifested in these lists speaks to a profound human inclination to interpret, relate, and yearn for order amidst chaos. Somewhere nestled between their star charts and sacrificial inventories lived the eternal hope that noting the quiver of Saturn's rings could stave off drought, and that a perfectly timed ritual with a flock of geese could bring 10 tons of grain. We, in our modern propensity for Google Calendar alerts and sticky notes on refrigerators, unknowingly channel these first sacred list makers. The sense of continuity is powerful. Would an Uruk priest recognize our own frenzied preparations for annual holidays or the undertaking of planning a wedding? The essential spirit of it all, the list-making, the careful orchestration to ensure nothing is overlooked, transcends time. Imagine, deep in the heart of antiquity, the ring of footsteps shuffling on clay floors, the smack of tablets being stacked and errands being barked to acolytes, sacrificial wines, check, hieratic robes pressed, roast beast prepared for inspection. From Sumer to Akkad, these lists not only structured the religious assemblies, but perhaps offered a fleeting sanctuary from the unknowable. The belief in order staved off the lurking fear of chaos, the kind of existential angst that only a society perpetually teetering on the brink of dust and glory could fathom. So, as you pause and reflect, the serenity of the Mesopotamian night envelops you, pulling you into the quiet hum of religion, civilization's earliest attempt to personify and plead with the universe. The Mesopotamians set in motion a legacy of list-making, charting their desires and divine interactions with the cosmos on humble clay tablets. In a paradox as ancient as time, these stories of the past merge with the digital notifications pinging our smartphones. Faith and order, spiraling eternally through the calendar of life. In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, you find yourself standing in the grand courtyard of a palace, where the air is filled with the scent of baking clay and freshly inscribed tablets. This is a place where power is not only wielded through martial might or divine favor, but also through the written word. It's the domain of kings, where edicts and decrees are as finely crafted as the gilt decorations that adorn the walls. Here the king's commandments are scribed onto clay tablets, each one a bridge between the ruler's will and the populace's obedience. You might think of them as the ancient world's version of sticky notes, only with far greater gravitas and far less likelihood of accidentally getting stuck to the bottom of one's sandal. The kings of Mesopotamia, especially those of famed cities like Babylon and Nineveh, understood that their commands needed to reach the far corners of their vast domains. Imagine managing a kingdom where messages can't be emailed or texted, the horror, where the spoken word can evaporate like morning mist if not firmly anchored in clay. Enter the cuneiform tablets, those small, squared-off chunks of eternity, etched with purpose. Each one bears royal instructions ranging from tax levies, a favorite among rulers, to pledges of military campaigns and dictates of law like the Code of Hammurabi. You might be tempted to think of Hammurabi as the ultimate bureaucrat. Historians consider whether his law codes were more about consolidating power than dispensing justice equally. 3 cheers for ancient bureaucracy. Or not. These royal edicts didn't just keep the wheels of government turning, they served as both public relations and statecraft. Kings proclaimed their greatness by listing their achievements and deeds. Picture a king penning, while dictating, what essentially is the Bronze Age equivalent of a modern resume, with only minor embellishments. You know, like how you might claim proficiency in Excel on LinkedIn. Of course, declaring grand construction projects and military conquests sounds a lot more impressive than balancing columns. As you wander among the courtyard's scribes and scholars, their pens scratching rhythmically on the clay, consider the tale of Sargon of Akkad, the first to forge an empire that stretched across the Fertile Crescent. His royal inscriptions didn't merely stake his claim over his lands. They mirrored the tenacity of ants at a picnic, relentless and all-consuming. Sargon's edicts crossed deserts and mountains, bolstered by an aura of divine support, a claim his descendants were more than happy to adopt. Whether Sargon's empire-building strategies were from inspired leadership or opportunistic expansion is something historians still debate, like the ancient game of Senet, a game even Sumerian kings might enjoy on a day off. But let's not forget the quirkiness hidden within these royal lists. Some kings penned decrees that indicated a penchant for quirky hobbies, like hunting expeditions targeting hedgehogs. A royal decree was once issued to ensure hedgehogs not only had their quills counted, seriously, who does that, but also to regulate their trade. This revelation about the nuanced tastes of ancient royalty certainly injects some hedgehog-sized mischief into the grandeur of empire. All around you in this ancient scene, the synchronization of power and practicality echoes through the craftsmanship of each cylinder seal and tablet pressed with royal insignias. These impressions do more than decorate. They validate and authenticate, much like that satisfying click when double-checking a locked front door, only with more cryptic charm. Kings, therefore, left a legacy imprinted on society as indelibly as a modern tattoo, set not on skin but stone. And tucked away within the broader tapestry of political rule and administrative regulation, these enduring lists of law and command were the solid bedrock upon which Mesopotamian culture was built. They influenced neighboring civilizations for centuries, laying down not just clay, but the very foundations upon which the structures of society were crafted. Royal decrees, now long buried or housed within museums and libraries, remain tantalizing whispers of a time when authority was as much a matter of listed pronouncements as it was of spears and swords. Each tablet reveals not just a king's command, but also the communal rhythm of ancient life. So as you take your leave of this mesmerizing time, stepping over tiled mosaics with their sunlit gleam, one royal decree at a time comes alive in your imagination. Envision the king's words, echoing through dusty bazaars, resonating over the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a reminder of how stipulations etched millennia ago ripple forward in our shared human story. Who knew something as simple as a list could be so powerful, and perhaps even have a hedgehog or two to liven things up? Picture yourself meandering down a dusty street in ancient Mesopotamia, the sun casting leisurely patterns over the crumbling yet vibrant facades of a bustling market. Look around. The hum of daily life is palpable, a symphony composed of haggling merchants, clanging metal, and the warm buzz of conversation. It's easy to romanticize the past, but living in this vibrant yet demanding world required more than just grit. It demanded organization. Welcome to the hidden yet omnipresent world of ancient Mesopotamian lists. Whether recorded on clay tablets or whispered conspiratorially in crowded market stalls, these lists were the secret sauce that enabled artisans, traders, and healers to manage their demanding daily routines. Feel the gritty texture of the air, thick with dust and the earthy scent of clay. Perhaps you're the town potter up at the crack of dawn, working the clay into pieces that will later bake in a primitive kiln. Your livelihood depends on efficiency, so you've jotted down, in your own informal system, the types and quantities of vessels ordered by the local innkeeper. Missing a mug? Well, let's just say you're not in the position to offer 2-for-1 earthenware sales as an apology. Over in the far corner of the market, a healer sits cross-legged, surrounded by baskets of herbs and dried roots. Lists are equally indispensable here. Your typical Mesopotamian apothecary operated without the luxury of digital records or even parchment. Instead, it's all transcribed on clay or stored precariously in memory. Grind up these roots, add 2 pinches of that herb, and chant a prayer to Marduk. And congratulations, you've just crafted an ancient cold remedy. Historians still argue whether these concoctions worked wonders or were merely elaborate placebo rituals, but guess who never forgot to restock a crucial ingredient? That's right, our savvy healer, the original apothecary influencer, owes it all to list-making. But it's not just professionals who cling to this structured chaos. Commoners, too, dabble in tablets to steer the course of their lives. You're a provider heading to the mill with this season's harvest list, detailed with which grains to grind or store. And while you're at it, there might be a quick jot about the livestock that needs bartering at the tanners. Life is brisk and barbed with responsibilities. You've learned the hard way that forgetting an item can mean skipping a family meal, a faux pas best avoided. The clamor of industry is a dance between organized efficiency and the relentless tick of time. Imagine pausing by a cluttered workbench laden with clay, notched awls, rolling pins, and the dulcet echo of tasks waiting to be etched. Quirky artifacts like a shepherd's list of sheep names, Fleece Lightning, and Woolly Nelson are brief snapshots into daily life. Are they essential? Perhaps not. Are they telling? Absolutely. While oddities litter the past as they do the present, these lists provide a bridge across time, connecting us to the mundane and profound tasks of ancient lives. In scribal schools, even students practicing their cuneiform, characters painstakingly impressed into damp clay, play their part. While memorizing the Sumerian equivalent of the phone book may not seem glitzy, many a young apprentice rehearsed these critical skills, thereby ensuring they didn't get relegated to the less glamorous role of goat herder. As you cross paths with others wading through the Memphis-like hum, it becomes clear. Lists are the quiet yet crucial engine propelling this world forward. Every occupation, from potter to apothecary to shepherd, spins a tale woven in the threads of organization. It's easy enough to assume that the Mesopotamian world was solely consumed with divine rites and royal edicts. Yet the heartbeat of this society, the overlapping rhythms of countless lists managed by everyday people, served as its essential pulse. There's an ongoing discussion among scholars about the degree to which these lists exercised control, almost like a brick-and-mortar social media feed, monitoring and curating daily life. Were they symbols of empowerment or coercion? Your guess is probably just as good as any ivory-towered historian's. And that's not all. Roaming closer to the temples and palaces throws you into the whirlwind of organized devotion, where even artisans are subject to divine oversight. It's said that royal apothecaries, under the watchful eye of temple deities like the healing goddess Gula, were more bound by to-do lists than by any binding contract. After all, even the gods were partial to a bit of herbal remedy now and then, presumably preferring aromatic balsams over today's pharmaceutical tongue twisters. For the apothecaries, not delivering on these divine shopping lists was akin to playing with fire, a decidedly low-score move in this ancient game of operation. So as the Mesopotamian day winds down, the list makers of every stripe and stature tuck away their tablets, leaving behind indelible etchings that will one day become the curiosity and object of scholarly debates. What to us are ordinary daily tasks, grocery shopping, appointment reminders, or maybe even a note to finally sign up for that yoga class, were inscribed as life-altering annotations in the clay-bound lives of these people. You wander home under the hushed, pastel sky, contemplating another full day orchestrated by the symphonic choreography of the simple yet profound list. Humor shades in the outlines of these systems, bringing the past into clearer focus. Consider if, by some cosmic joke, we are not so different after all. Today's grocery lists and appointment apps echoing the voices of those who etched their needs into clay millennia ago. The rich tapestry of Mesopotamian life, woven with every jot and mark, tells us one unwavering truth. In the grand chaos of existence, it's the small, ordered things that carry us through. You find yourself in the heart of ancient Nineveh, the air thick with the scent of baked earth and the barely audible rustle of palm leaves. The city seems to exhale history. And there, amid its echoing halls and storied walls, lies the library of Ashurbanipal. Less of a shh kind of library, and more of a wow, I can't believe this survived conquests, fires, and natural disasters kind of place. Here, lists are not just mundane records of ancient grocery runs or sheep transactions, but are instead woven into the very fabric of human knowledge, a curated collection of accumulated wisdom. Strolling through the library, you might be tempted to dismiss the clay tablets as today's equivalent of forgotten sticky notes, perhaps scrawled with to-dos. Yet each tablet here is a trove of meticulous thought, containing everything from medical treatises to epic tales like the Epic of Gilgamesh. Imagine stumbling upon one of those tablets, perhaps wondering if it holds the secret recipe for Mesopotamian coffee. Sadly, historians still argue whether it was tea or a strong lager that kept Mesopotamian scribes wide-eyed while listing the stars. The mainstream historians nod sagely. This was the brainchild of Ashurbanipal, they muse, a king with a passion for literacy. Rather unusual in his time, Ashurbanipal was said to have boasted the literacy levels of a modern-day bookworm with lots of social media time to spare. His library, they explain, was the very staggering initiative of a ruler determined to preserve every scrap of knowledge available. Kind of like someone who hoarded information the way others hoard cat memes, but way more sophisticated. Yet, amid these epic tablets, you'll discover quirky surprises. Picture a scribe, hunched over a new list of incantations designed to ward off illness, a tablet spelling out what might just be the first recorded list of health tips. Whether these involve crocodile dung sunscreen and honey ointments, or simply acknowledging the local god's whims, the practicality and mysticism of these lists come together in a mix that's strangely comforting, like an ancient hug crossed with modern wellness trends. Walking through the library further, you almost hear the whispers of scholars from countless ages as they try to make sense of a fragmented passage or debate the true meaning of long-faded characters. Take a moment to appreciate the serendipity that spared these treasures from oblivion. Fires might have reduced more fragile works to ash, but these hardy clay tablets persevered, a testament to their makers' belief in solid architecture and robust data storage. Your imagination drifts as you imagine archaeologists centuries later, poring over the library's treasures like detectives following a cold trail. Even today, new discoveries from the library spark scholarly debates about Mesopotamian society. Which tablets held the deepest secrets? Were these lists more than mundane inventories? Possibilities spark, tablets encoded with double meanings, listing stars as gods, plants as medicines, or heaven forbid, plans for organizing grand construction projects like an ancient DIY guide with pitfalls and pitfalls. The dim light in the quiet corners of the library casts shadows that seem to animate the dreams of scholars, restoring these lists from static remains to vibrant life. It's humbling to consider that these dusty clay slabs, not unlike ancient smartphones with infinite battery life, continue to influence our understanding of the past. Each time they whisper the old echoes of order and curiosity, you remember. Lists weren't merely organizational tools. They were the framework of civilization's brain, the building blocks of structured thought that trickled down through time to shape our understanding of everything from particle physics to Pinterest boards. The Library of Ashurbanipal doesn't just house actual relics of ancient times, but emblemizes the enduring power of the written word, the weight of lists as embodiments of clarity amidst chaos. Even long past civilizations rise and fall. Those lists, perhaps taken for granted by many who made them, transform into a compass guiding archaeologists, scholars, and curious YouTubers through the undercurrents of history. So, the next time you're scribbling furiously in a notebook or tapping into your digital planner, spare a thought for these ancient scribes. Consider the bold legacy inscribed into the clay and laughter that time has somehow missed. Whether they cataloged the simple, complex, spiritual, or bureaucratic, their meticulous work kept alive stories painted with the brushstrokes of life long before modern convenience. And as you depart the silent echoes of Ashurbanipal's grand library, remember that each list you make is a step in a grand tradition, a tribute to the complex tapestry of civilizations past. Savor the irony that as modernity surges forward, we find ourselves looped back in time to when lists became pivotal, no less determinative now of weighty projects and humble groceries. For lists, you see, patiently transcend, whisperingly eternal. As you wander through the sands of time, picture yourself walking along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates. The echoes of bustling cities like Babylon and Ur can still be heard if you listen closely enough. The mighty ziggurats that once pierced the sky now crumble silently, their stones whispering stories of a grand past. Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, faces its twilight, yet it leaves behind footprints on the sands for future societies to follow. The decline of these great civilizations is as complex and nuanced as a Sumerian love poem. Historians still argue whether it was the relentless pressure of invading forces like the pesky Gudians who seem to have forgotten their party invitations, or perhaps Mother Nature herself, throwing unpredictable floods and droughts like a diva on a bad day, that started the domino effect. What is certain, though, is that Mesopotamia became a stage where many players performed their acts of rise and fall. Empires like the Akkadian, the Third Dynasty of Ur, and the Babylonians took their turn in the spotlight, each trying to outdo the last with grandeur and list-making prowess. Speaking of list-making, remember those humble clay tablets scratched with cuneiform? They were more than just organizational tools for those farmer clerks with artistic inclinations. As cities crumbled and new seats of power emerged, the practice of keeping detailed records, the art of the to-do list, remained a steadfast tradition. Those sensible scribes, probably the ancient equivalent of a modern librarian's spirit animal, dutifully archived decrees, trade records, and poems, inadvertently preserving a slice of human ingenuity for posterity. It's worth noting that list-making wasn't just about keeping beans in their proverbial jars. These records were imbued with a certain gravitas, edicts from kings, or even the casual grocery list dictated by a particularly picky priest. There's always a question of what exactly imported amphora wine entailed back then, but let's not dig too deep into why ancient lists share suspicious similarities with modern shopping lists. The point is, these lists became templates for codifying order in an ever-chaotic world. As civilizations rose and fell, absorbing and adapting Mesopotamian practices was as common as a Renaissance fair with too many turkey legs. Assyrians, Persians, and Greeks found themselves entangled in this vast repository of knowledge. The famed library of Ashurbanipal, as you might recall from our little journey, hoarded knowledge beyond even the wildest dreams of an artisanal hipster bookstore. It was a treasure trove from which these cultures borrowed liberally, ensuring that the Mesopotamian penchant for documentation outlived their architects. Now, let's consider this quirky notion. Mesopotamian lists, in all their earthy practicality, might have had a spiritual angle too, no, not involving ancient aliens or the Loch Ness Monster. There's a fringe belief that these lists helped mediate between the human and the divine, maybe as a way to quell the existential dread of cosmic chaos. Whether you buy into that or let it reside in the same speculative space as Cleopatra's beauty hacks is up to you. Through the lens of time, the continuation of Mesopotamian ethos is evident not only in dusty ruins, but in the adoption of its administrative genius by the cultures that followed. Egyptians, though quite adept at mummifying matters, still liked a good inventory. Rome, grand and glorious, took copious notes on governance, taxes, and which garum was the best on toast. The progression of society itself owed much to the simple practice of keeping things organized. Interestingly, this transition wasn't just a mechanical or intellectual inheritance. It was as if civilization itself had been given a thread to hold, one that linked the past to their present. A profound reminder that sometimes human aspirations are but the echoes of those who walk the earth before us. Lists became the unsung backbone of progress, the dry humor amidst the grand narrative of human history. As the winds sweep over the forgotten cities, sandblasting rooftops that once hummed with life, you can sense a continuity. Mesopotamian gridded cities, with their storied columns of texts, paved the way for a future where lists grew into ledgers, and ledgers morphed into documents that now zip around cyberspace quicker than you can say Sumerian sail. You can almost hear a Babylonian scribe chuckling in their grave, wondering why nobody invented autosave back then. What an exercise in resilience and adaptation. While the ziggurat bricks fade into obscurity, the very essence of list-making endures, shaping the administrative scaffoldings of nations and manifesting in unexpected places where organization and innovation converge. From the jagged timelines of the past, you see that every list recorded, from the moment an ancient scribe etched a line in clay, carries echoes that ripple across epochs, interweaving past wisdom with future aspirations. Like a robust vine weaving its tendrils through the span of civilizations, these lists remain entwined with the core of human development itself. So as the sands of the Fertile Crescent continue to shift, uncovering more artifacts for those with trowels and patience to ponder, one can't help but envision a day when a future scholar, far removed from our own scribbling on screens, tries to make sense of our form of list-making. Oh, the inboxes and spreadsheets they'd find. They may chuckle as we do now, connecting across ages through the simple yet profound human urge to record, organize, and understand the world around us, one list at a time. Somewhere beneath the modern territories of Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, and Turkey, you stand with our modern-day Indiana Jones. Archaeologists armed not with whips but with dusting brushes and a penchant for piecing together history's scattered jigsaw puzzle. These earnest souls scrape away layers of conflict, civilizations, and a fair bit of ancient trash to reveal the enchanted realm of cuneiform tablets. Picture this. Like sage librarians cataloging volumes in a forgotten language, these modern adventurers wrestle with symbols that resemble avant-garde 3-year-old doodles on clay, bringing voices of the ancients back to life. As you crouch down beside the dig, your nose picks up the dusty aroma of time-worn earth, part soil, part tale. Whispering from the ground are tablets etched with cuneiform, the script that has survived by pig-headed persistence more than by design. Yes, it's the written equivalent of a mullet, all business with elongated shapes, but somehow it's that party in the curves that keeps scholars amused. Mainstream historians can agree that cuneiform is humanity's first go at crafting the written word, long before emojis graced text conversations. The tablets, encoded with sharp-edged beauty, recount tales of trade, laws, and day-to-day drama. They're basically the ultimate Mesopotamian receipts, defying historians to argue over whether they amount to idle gossip or practical listings. Marvel at the stories that emerge from these clay relics, each chapter a testimony of human evolution, as thrilling as a Netflix documentary, but without the comfort of subtitles. Contemplate the quirky tidbit that these tablets weren't just slabs of random mumblings. No, Mesopotamians knew that accuracy in recording resources could make or break a kingdom. The inventory lists, painstakingly etched, sound a bit like someone obsessively tracking their daily coffee intake. Sorry, Starbucks, Mesopotamia got there first. Despite their compelling content, deciphering these tablets is no leisurely pursuit. Each character is an adventure, with archaeologists striving to translate, one mark at a time, into words that convey the passage of human thought. Interestingly, the same clay that once served as a canvas would have made for an excellent ancient frisbee. Just think, centuries of perilous punting across the Middle Eastern sands could have wiped out their legacy. Yet here they are, stubborn as ever. Historians still argue whether each tablet represented a mundane shopping list or a grand cultural manifesto. It's the classic case of one archaeologist's grocery list being another's Magna Carta. Under the magnifying glass, each cluster of symbols may reveal a new secret, shedding light on everything from bureaucracy to barley prices. So keep your fingers crossed and your hieroglyph handbook handy. Among the archaeological community, there's an ongoing debate not unlike a kindly family dispute at Thanksgiving, but instead of turkey stuffing, they argue over translation nuances. Some argue these tablets contain kingly edicts, others suspect it's just another 6 centuries late bridal registry. Either way, it's a page from an ancient diary and a spotlight on Mesopotamia's identity, gained and lost in the swirling sands of time. Now take a moment to reflect on the irony of ancient organizational prowess. Imagine, if you will, upon deciphering one such masterpiece, that you find a list item titled, "What's for dinner?" A phrase spanning centuries, just as perplexing then as it is after a 21st century workday. Have you ever seen such dedication to documenting the unspectacular? Mesopotamians had an unmatched zest for listing. It's almost as if crafting tablets was their equivalent of today's bullet journaling, sans the pastel markers and inspirational quotes. The longer you watch these archaeologists at play, the more you appreciate the tactile connection they have with the past. Ranging from the colors to the chalky texture of the clay, each detail gifts you with an immersive glimpse into life millennia ago. Imagine feeling the coolness of freshly unearthed tablets, the weight of them breathing 100 stories. Hold it carefully, as if it were a scoop of kaleidoscopic ice cream, minus the sticky fingers, and consider that you cradle history in the palms of your hands. In the backdrop of sandstone horizons, the contemporary quest continues to uncover knowledge puzzle pieces scattered eons ago by mighty winds of change. Forget about quick wins or shortcut discoveries. This is the kind of marathon that suits those with a penchant for detail and a golem-like fascination with ancient treasures. These scholars unravel tales with the tenacity of detectives, reconstructing the foundation of our organizational forebears. Each tablet a chapter, each glyph a glimpse of Mesopotamian wisdom. What's compelling, though, is how these scratched-out impressions impact our modern-day processes. You could argue that if scribes weren't scribbling away feverishly back then, today's stock market tickers and shopping logs would look vastly different, or even non-existent. How else would we manage without our lists of online subscriptions, office tasks, or weekend binge-watching rosters? Let's offer a covert nod of gratitude to those clever scribes, our venerated to-do list pioneers. Not content to rest on their laurels, archaeologists don't just uncover stories, They implant reverent curiosity in each translated whisper of the past. Their eternal pursuit continues to echo, speaking into a chasm of possibility, that behind each discovery lies a new perspective on our shared humanity. And who wouldn't pause to wonder just how much of the past lingers in our world today, cleverly disguised as progress? With sandy visuals and earthy aromas tickling your senses, bid adieu to the archaeologists, nudging those tablets into revealing secrets. Get ready to leave the ancient site as if closing a book with a satisfied sigh, though you can't help clandestinely hope they'll stumble upon something legendary, a clay tablet revealing the great mysteries of the universe, or perhaps just the way to brew the perfect cup of Mesopotamian coffee. In this delicate dance of discovery, we inch closer to understanding the ancient while redefining the now. It's just another day in the life of modern-day treasure hunters, unearthing the remarkable in the relics of the routine. As you glance around your modern life with its screens, alarms, and never-ending emails, it's easy to feel swamped by the incessant tide of information and obligations swirling about. And yet, if you pause for a moment, you might hear a faint whisper, a distant echo borne on the wind from a time long past, a whisper of those first to-do lists etched into clay tablets by diligent scribes of Mesopotamia. These ancient predecessors of modern planners continue to resonate through time, subtly guiding our efforts to bring order to chaos and structure to scattered thoughts. Imagine a scribe in ancient Sumer, methodically carving a list into wet clay with deft strokes of a reed stylus, each impression setting the stage for daily tasks and rituals. Although these lists were perhaps less concerned with picking up organic kale or booking yet another Zoom meeting, they mirrored the desires and challenges that still occupy our minds today. Organizing resources, managing economies, adhering to social obligations. Historians still argue about the extent of influence these early systems of organization wielded, but their foundational impact on record-keeping is undeniable. It is remarkable how their simplicity, clay and reed, gave rise to a legacy that would weave itself into the very fabric of human society. You might even say it was the original bullet journal, albeit a bit more chiseled. Whispering forward through centuries, these lists have guided merchants tallying trade goods, architects drafting plans on digital blueprints, and even ritualists planning ceremonies, all underpinned by the elemental need to track and codify information. One quirky tidbit about these ancient lists is their use in divination. Yes, your modern horoscope or Myers-Briggs might trace its roots back to cuneiform notations on celestial movements, meticulously logged with the hope of predicting the future. While you stress over whether your latte is too foamy, Sumerians wondered if their crops would prosper, all reliant on the careful logging of information. Fascinatingly, the evolution from clay tablets to digital task apps didn't lose the essence of their intent. Lists have become the backbone of legal systems, the gridwork of scientific research, and the scaffold of literature. These early lists might not have foreseen TikTok notification strategies, but they paved the way for the methods we use to interact with our world each day. You might smile at the idea of ancient scribes as early productivity influencers, sharing tips on organizing your life one clay tablet at a time. Yet, like an art form passed down through generations, the basic principles of list-making have survived, enriched and transformed by each society that inherited them. Though the edges of these practices might have blurred, the core remains sturdy and recognizable. Let's not forget the scholarly skirmish over the precise role of these lists in governing Mesopotamian daily life. Were they simply for practical management, or did they hold a more profound cultural significance? Academics puzzle over this like a clay-stamped enigma, adding layers of interest to these remarkable artifacts. Fast forward to today, and these rudimentary organizational tools find their echoes amid our smartphones, sticky notes, and digital assistants. Perhaps, as you sit contemplating your next step in the seemingly relentless cycle of tasks, deadlines, and reminders, you can sense that whisper of Mesopotamia's past, still echoing with relevance. Just as these lists provided a framework for ancient civilizations to ascend into organized complexity, they remain an invisible thread linking us to our predecessors, emphasizing the shared humanity that transcends time. That same sense of order persists in our spreadsheets and shopping lists, highlighting an enduring human desire to make sense of the world through the simple act of listing. Imagine then, as your present-day self fumbles through the everyday mess of life, that those etched impressions in clay speak gently from the annals of history, even giggling a bit at your latest frantic composition of a to-do list titled "Save the World" and also "Pick up dry cleaning." You are part of a grand tradition that preceded you by thousands of years. Allow yourself this moment of connection with antiquity, a calming whisper from those who have traversed the landscape of order before you, guiding not with grandiose proclamations, but through simple, humbly stated intentions. As this narrative of lists draws to a close, remember that these echoes of the past linger gently, wrapping you in continuity and quiet assurance. Now, let's ease our way toward a tranquil wind down, a softening of the sharp edges of history into the gentle curves of reflection. Picture yourself unwinding, like a reed flattened by tender strokes, yielding yet resilient. The air around you grows quiet, and with each breath, the lessons of Mesopotamian scribes spiral tenderly in the air, peaceful echoes of a civilization rich in wisdom. They envelop you, like warm sunlight on an ancient orchard, where time seems to slow and concerns melt away into amber horizons. While you listen to this soothing whisper from the dawn of history, let its calm presence guide you through the intricacies of life today. As you dream or rest, imagine those ancient scribes smiling gently from their timeless place, knowing that their lists set the seed for the orchestration of human endeavors throughout millennia. Fade into tranquility, allowing the gentle cadence of history's lullaby to assure you that, like the Mesopotamians, you're part of a grand symphony, striving for harmony amidst the world's orchestral clamor. Let this be a reminder that no matter the era, humanity's drive to bring order to chaos remains a shared, unifying journey. Rest easy, another day's tasks gently easing into stillness as their echoes gently retreat, carrying you calmly to tomorrow's dawn.